Welcome back to another installment of Galley Stories. I'm Mark Kaler. And today we've hooked quite the catch here. We've got Jeff Crain, the captain of the FV Sovereignty. Hello, Jeff.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing good.
Right on.
So, Jeff, this is, of course, unscripted, so we can say whatever we want. But
I hope so, because I just stopped by and I have no idea what to say. So.
I've asked a couple people questions about what I should ask you.
Right.
And one of them is to tell us how you first got started in the fishing industry, because yours is a little more unique than some of the other captains in the fleet.
Gotcha. I started really early. I started when I was 16 and a half. So, what led up to it was a whole bunch of crap. I mean, I wasn't rebellious youth pretty much. So I quit school. I had a friend that went up to Alaska one time, and then he started talking about it, and we were young and lived in Burien, right, South Seattle, in the 80s. Just hated school, hated things that were going on with me, and it sounded great, so I decided to go up. And so I signed a contract with the company for, when I was 16 and a half, I had to get a note from my parents. It was with Clipperton Seafoods, I think, was what it was. But anyway, signed a contract for 4 months for $2.10 an hour, and I got a $1,000 bonus if I finished the 4-month contract. So that was my contract. That was it. So I flew up, right, and it was January 1982. I think it was 82. It might have been 81, but I think it was 82. January of 82, whatever. So flew up, left Seattle on a Revolution plane, as I remember. This was a long time ago. Left Seattle on a Revolution plane, 4-prop plane, straight to Anchorage. 6 hours.
Wow.
Right? And that's back when everybody smoked on the plane.
Engines right next to you.
Engines right now. I mean, louder than shit.
No hearing protection provided.
Yeah.
And 16 and a half.
And smoking. Everybody smoked, right? On the plane. So just brutal. But
and you weren't smoking at this time, right? 16 and a half? Or were you?
I don't think I was smoking cigarettes at that time. I was smoking, but yeah.
It wasn't cigarettes?
It wasn't cigarettes, yeah. So, yeah, long flight to Anchorage. And then I don't even remember what the flight was to Dutch, right? But it was probably Revolution 2. But we had to stop in Anchorage for sure. So then we fly into Dutch Harbor. Snowing like crazy.
Was that runway gravel at that time?
It was.
It was, right? Because it was the first time I flew in there.
Yep. And I was, scared shitless.
You were right over the water, about to just drop
right
in.
I had no idea what I was getting into.
Right.
So we land in Dutch Harbor, snowing like crazy. Get out, and at that time there was just this little building there, a Penn Air building, or some air pack, I think, or something like that. Some old company there. Little tiny place. Everybody piles off the plane, goes in, kind of filters out. Guys come grab them, big burly crabbers. Everybody's running around, and everybody leaves, and there I am standing at the counter, and I'm like, I have no idea what to do. I'm like clueless, So I walk up, and they're like, what's your name? Where are you going? And I'm like, Akutan? They're like, oh, okay, well, you got to go on the Goose. So I'm like, all right, I got to go on the Goose, right? So this guy comes up.
Not knowing at all.
You're not knowing anything, yeah. So this guy comes up, and it's just him and me. We jump in the Goose, and he takes me. We fly off the runway, start heading over, and it's shitty out. I mean, it's crappy. It's snowing and blowing sideways, and I think I was wearing a leather jacket and parachute pants, I'm pretty sure. Right?
Parachute pants.
Yeah, had a
little Michael Jackson action going on.
Had all the business going in the back.
All of it.
Long curly hair, and there I am. And so we land in Akutan, and in Akutan then...
Now, wait a minute. Now, the Goose, though, that lands in water.
It landed in the water.
Okay,
yeah. So that's my first experience with any of that
So you're
stuff.
on this plane, getting ready to take off from Dutch Harbor.
Yep.
You're on land at this point, right? Because it's got wheels. He rolls it off into the water, and you're just thinking, what the hell's going on here?
Just him and me.
Right.
And you can't see
anything. Did you get the co-pilot seat, or did you have to sit in the...
got the co-pilot seat.
Okay.
Yep. So, and I had one little bag of stuff, I mean, it just unbelievable,
So you were
totally
scared.
Scared out of my mind.
Right.
No idea what I was getting into. And that's not even the worst part. So then we land on the water in Akutan and pull up to this gravel bar, right? Akutan looks completely different now, but back then, this was when crab was at the height, right? It was right before the crash. So Akutan was just loaded with barges and skiffs and stuff going all over the place. But the plant, that Trident plant, was pretty small. There wasn't much there. So we pull up to this gravel bar, and he pretty much says, throws my bag out on the beach, and says, somebody will come get you in a minute. And took off. Seriously. And it's foggy, it's snowing, it's crappy. I got my parachute pants on. I got my mullet going. You know,
16-and-a-half-year-old kid
16-and-a-half-year-old kid
from Burien,
with a note from my
Washington,
parents.
With a note from your parents.
Saying I can work.
Is standing on a beach in Akutan, Alaska,
Akutan,
which
Alaska.
is like just about as bad as Adak, especially at that point.
Yeah.
You're in the middle of nowhere.
Unbelievable, right?
Okay,
so there I am.
Now we're on the beach.
Maybe it seemed like an hour. It was probably 10 minutes. This skiff pulls up. One guy in the skiff says, "Hey, you Jeff?" I'm like, "Yep." Throw your shit in the skiff. Throw it in the skiff. We take off and we go a couple hundred yards down the bay to the Speedwell. The MV Speedwell was the name of the boat. I think it's up in the slough up here now, or maybe it got dismembered. I don't know, but it was a 180-foot Japanese trawler that was converted into a processing ship, right? So it couldn't fish. It processed at that point, and it processed king crab. So pull up to this thing, and there's home, right? And it was freaking horrible. I mean, just unbelievable.
So you found yourself on a processing line.
Yep, got myself on a processing line, butchering crab for $2 an hour.
Okay.
Started out gutting it or
you kept
gilling
it.
it.
You kept thinking about that $1,000 at the end, right?
It was big money for me. You know?
Yeah.
$2 an hour back then was. I mean, it was nothing.
I got a feeling we could build an entire podcast just on your processing career here.
Yeah. So anyway, that was it. That was the start. I got on that boat, and there was.
What was the first progression from moving from that plant environment into stepping foot on a boat?
From that processor, so it was a 180-foot processor, right? I did a couple contracts on that boat, and then from there I went to the trawler. I got on the Arctic trawler. That was fishing. You know, that boat fished. So then that was where the step was. So that was going from just butchering crab and doing whatever.
So you're on a 180-foot boat butchering crab that doesn't move, right? And you move to the Arctic trawler. How big is the Arctic trawler? How many people are on there?
It was 300 feet. 300 feet, and it would leave Seattle and go up to Alaska and then come back to Seattle.
So it was catching
there was
the product.
40 of us on there.
It was catching it and processing it at the same time, right?
Cod.
So,
All
and
cod,
what was your responsibility on the vessel?
When I started out, I was in the factory, obviously, you know, so just greenhorn working in the factory, and then started being a combi. So you'd move up on deck when they hauled back and set the nets. I started doing that, and that was it. Once you worked in a factory for a little while and you looked up on deck and you saw the deck, it was like, that's where I want out of here, right?
Okay.
I want out of the factory.
And how long were you on that vessel or in that kind
I was on there for 2 years, I think.
Okay.
2 or 3 years. I met my wife on there.
Really? She was working on there?
Yep, she was working on there, yep.
Okay.
There was a bunch.
We might have to get her on one of these sometime to tell the story of how a young lady ends up on a processing vessel in the early 80s.
Yep. It was a different world back then, man. It was a different world. But there was women and men on that boat. Like there is on factory trawlers now, but there was only I don't even know if there was 40 of us on there. There might, like 30 people or something on a big boat like that, and it was family. Brent Paler was on there. He now is the cap of the Island Enterprise.
Okay.
He was in my room, so we shared a room. And it was family, and a bunch of us got married off that boat.
So just real quick, since you mentioned rooms, on that particular boat, was there just two guys to a room, or was there...
A lot of 2-man rooms, a lot of 4-man rooms, and some people, then single rooms.
What about that first boat?
6-man room.
Yeah, because first boat I was ever on, it was a 12-man bunk room. Yeah. I mean, it was holy hell. Yeah. You had to crawl in sideways to get in and hope that you didn't sneeze.
The Speedwell had pallets on the floor because the water was running through the stateroom.
Oh, goodness.
It was freaking filthy. It was filthy.
Man.
Horrible.
So now we're 2 years on the Arctic trawler.
Yep, 2 years on the Arctic
trawler. We're up
trawler.
there. We're mostly working the deck now, right? Because we're moving right along. Yep. So where's our step now to get on some of these more pristine boats that you currently operate
From there, I went to the Northern Glacier, right? And went to the Northern Glacier and worked on there for a year, I think.
How big a boat was that?
And that's a nice boat. That was smaller. I think it was 250, something like that. But it was a Norwegian-built boat, and, well, really nice. That was a step into the
Isn't that a gimme when you say Norwegian, that it's going to be a very nice boat?
Yeah,
Probably operated well and
well
maintained.
I suppose so, yeah. Different world. Definitely a different feel when you're working on a Norwegian boat. But so that was kind of things can get nicer, you know, because the Arctic trawler was, back then, it was a nice boat and everything.
You're
but
still
it
thinking of the Speed, whatever it was, right? You're still thinking of that nightmare, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, so then where do we go from here?
So from there, I went to Arctic Alaska. And I went on the Bering Enterprise as deck boss. That's when I made the step to deck boss, was on the Bering Enterprise. I worked on that boat for a few years, running the deck and doing that kind of stuff.
Also a processor?
That was a catcher processor, yeah. Head and gut boat.
Okay.
So that did head and gut, right? Rock sole and
they have freezers on board, they freeze it up, then pass it off to a tramper
trips.
Or to a... Oh, okay, so you came back into town and dropped off.
10-day trips, at a Dutch harbor. Yeah, so I worked on there for a few years, and that was when I started to do some licensing stuff. Then at that point,
started getting those ticks off there.
Yeah, figuring out stuff for licensing, because then from there you start realizing, okay, where am I going? Because the deck's great, but where's the next step?
Right.
And the next step for me is the wheelhouse. Engine room. A lot of guys, most of the captains in the fleet, honestly, came from the engine room, and I didn't. I'm one of the few that just never made that step down.
So much time on deck, you thought you'd just run up instead of running down.
Yeah. So it was straight to the wheelhouse.
And when did that occur for you? What vessel?
Arctic 1. The Arctic 1. So I was on the Bering Enterprise, right, for a few years, and then you started hearing about catcher boat. There was joint venture stuff that had been going on, but you started to hear this talk about catcher boats and only a few guys on a boat, right? So you want to try that, right? So
something new.
More money, less crap going on,
Grass is
less
greener,
people.
but it really is greener.
Right. So I went to the Arctic 1, which was not a step up in any way, right? It was a 100-foot boat, bender boat, old, not very stable, but it was a catcher boat, and we did it, So that was kind of my step into.
How many guys on that boat?
5 of us.
Oh, so now you're into the small, compact confines that we got to get along, or somebody's going to go overboard, right?
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
Somebody's going to fall off going pee in the night.
Yep. And at that point, back up a little bit, but before that, alcohol and drugs, wide open.
On the boats and
everybody was doing it, and wide open, totally different world. Going to Arctic Alaska, that was my first. That they had drug and alcohol policy, and it was serious.
Yeah,
right. Didn't screw around. You'd get off the boat. You go to Dutch, and they give everybody $200 and free for all. Right.
See you in 24 hours.
See you in 24 hours or whatever. Yeah. No drinking on the boat, no drugs on the boat. So total change. I mean, big time change. When you got on the catcher boats,
little withdrawals there. Or?
No, well, I don't know about so much. Just different, just totally different
mentality,
but
mindset.
Way safer. I mean, there's no doubt. It was fun back then, but it was insane. I mean, it was freaking crazy, and that needed to go away, and it has, and it's been great for the, there's a reason, we don't lose boats now. There's a reason we don't lose as many guys and have as many injuries and all that
captain's
stuff.
not drunk, right?
Yeah, exactly, or the captain's drunk and the whole crew's for whatever, but.
So it seems that you built, at least in the initial part of your career, building it up on the processing vessels, moving up on a deck, and then finally into the wheelhouse of the Arctic 1. Is that the first boat that you went up in the wheelhouse in?
It is. Yeah, that's the first boat. I was the maid on that boat.
And where did
it was an unlicensed boat. But Arctic Alaska still, they wanted all their guys to be licensed and all that stuff. So
I said at the beginning of the podcast we caught a big fish when we got you to come talk to us today, but the reason being is you run a licensed vessel now. You're required to. I mean, everything has to be on point. How did you get to this point now from where you were at?
To the Sovereignty?
Yeah.
From that, really, Arctic Alaska, it was kind of a weird story to get on the Sovereignty. I had no idea. I was on the Arctic 1. We came in from a season, and they basically told us when we hit the dock, hey, guess what? The Arctic 1's being sold. So we were out of jobs. All of us were out of jobs. They took that boat to the East Coast. It was a mad scramble to what am I going to do now when I got home? Just got a phone call, and they had some stuff going on the Sovereignty where the captain on the boat was kind of got shoved off the boat for a little bit for like a brief period of time because he'd made some mistakes or whatever. The mate thought he should get that job and didn't, so he quit. And it just happened just like that. I got a phone call and said, "Hey, do you want a job on the Sovereignty?" Because I had that license.
These papers worth some money, isn't it?
Yeah, so I drove down and that was it. I was on, and it was from day one. It was what a dream job.
That's
just a
awesome.
Freaking dream job.
So now, how long have you been fishing then in total? I mean, we're talking
about
from
it's
the time
almost 38 years.
38 years.
Yeah.
From the time that 16-year-old kid in parachute pants and a mullet got off in Aggie.
Yep. 38 years. Awesome. Yeah, long time, man.
So during that time, you've probably had at least one experience that's really stuck with you, and I mean a scary experience. Mm-hmm. Can you think of one that and give us a little?
There's been some stuff, but I'm probably one of the luckiest fishermen up there. I've never had a really serious life and death situation up there. The most scared I've ever been was sitting on that island at 16 years old, sitting on that beach, waiting for that skiff to come. That was as scared as I've ever been.
I don't think we can get a better story than that.
Yeah,
either.
That was as scared as I've ever been. But the most
has there been some funny stuff then?
Oh, tons of funny stuff. Oh yeah. I mean, there's been scary stuff for sure, but just no real when I was on the Arctic trawler, we lost power in Unimac Pass. We blew a main engine in Unimac Pass. My wife was on the boat at the time, and we lost everything. So they lost the mains, and that was diesel electric back then on that boat. So we lost the mains. They had the emergency generator fired up, and they were so busy screwing around downstairs trying to get it was 40-footers for sure in the pass, and that boat just rolled like a pig, right? So we're rolling like crazy, and people are freaking out. There's people on there that I don't think we ever did a drill on that boat. I don't think.
Really?
I don't think so. Maybe we did do some drills, but there wasn't much of that stuff, and people were freaking, right? Rolling, portholes, open portholes, taking water through them. I mean, just rolling like crazy, and they ran the emergency generator out of fuel, and it died. So black ship.
Sounds like they had a good chief, right?
Yeah. Well, people were hammered. It was
okay.
like Friday
so that
night.
Wasn't still
back then. Back in those days, yeah. Saturday night was party night, and everybody freaking did it, right? So
even
it was Saturday night, and people were hammered, right? So all this is going on, and they wound up trying to get some lines to a boat, and I was a combi at that time, so I was trying to help, but I had really no idea what to do either. Nobody really had any idea what to do.
That seems like a pretty scary experience.
We wound up getting a boat alongside and just smashed the shit out of it. And they drug us into Lost Harbor. And we sat in Lost Harbor for a week trying to get that thing going. But that was probably the most dangerous thing I've ever seen, you know?
Well, that's pretty good in 38 years at sea.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's a scary experience, though.
I mean,
anytime you don't have any power.
Yep. I've been in the water a couple times, but it's just been splashed in the water.
Wait a minute, you've been in the water?
Yeah, I've been in the water. Yeah,
on purpose or just totally on accident?
No, I got knocked in. Yeah, I got knocked in the water one time, but it was calm and it wasn't any big. You know, it was no danger to it. Just got out of the water, so
not a place you want to be, though.
Never been in a big fire. Just I've been really, really lucky, and
like
honestly, part of that is, in my mind, is picking the right boat after the speedwell and some of that stuff, but.
You weren't going to find yourself being that. You weren't going to find yourself being that kid on the beach anymore.
No. So yeah, lucky, but funny stuff, man.
Give us a good one. Come on.
Well, there's a couple. Okay, so I was on this longliner one time. This isn't even that. I don't know if it's funny or not, but I was on a 90-foot longliner in the midst of when I don't even remember when.
Longliners, what? Throwing out the hooks on it,
tub gear. Yeah, I don't even remember how it happened, but something happened, and I was like, I'll go do it for a winter. On this 90-foot longliner up in the Pribilofs.
Little spare time.
Yeah, it was tub gear, so it was all hand baited, and it was freaking brutal. We'd leave Dutch Harbor, and you'd have to bait gear all the way up to the Pribilofs. It was just a shit show. But anyway, we got something in the wheel at one point up in the Pribs, and nobody on the boat knew what to do about it. So I'd done a couple dives in my life. So I'm like, I'll go down there. I'll swim down there. So I put a survival suit on, and they get a regulator and hook a regulator up to the freaking air supply coming off the generator or something, which now I know I probably should have died anyway, right? But so I jump over the side in this survival suit, and I got to have a bunch of weight on. So I got a bunch of weight on to get enough to get down there, and I get down, and I'm wrapping myself around the
survival suit's supposed to be keeping you floating,
supposed to keep you floating, right? So I got all this chain.
So you're throwing weights.
I got this chain and shit wrapped around me, and I got this hose going into my face, right? That's just pumping air in, and I'm all strapped up, trying to get down, and I wrap myself around the freaking thing, and the wheel is just coated in line, right? And it's melted around it, and I got a Victorinox, and it took me like 2 hours to cut this stuff out of there.
With the hose in your mouth.
Yeah, with the hose just going into my mouth, and I'm like, I'll do it. And come to find out that, I probably should have died from breathing that
whatever it was,
engine exhaust going in there. But anyway, yeah, so that was one. But the funniest thing I can think of is I've been on a ton of boats, right? So we're not going to get to all the boats I've been on, but I was on a factory trawler called, it was another Norwegian boat. It's no longer here. It got decommissioned. It wasn't the Saga Sea, but the Valiant. Okay, it was the Valiant. Royal Princess used to be, but it was the Valiant. Really, really nice factory trawler. It was in the summer. Susan was pregnant, and we were going out to do a trip. We'd done a couple trips. We were offloading in St. Paul, and we were going out to do a trip. Lauren Perry on one of the other boats calls up the captain and says, "Hey, Jeff's wife's going to deliver. She's going to have the baby. He needs to get off the boat." So the captain of the Valiant, cool guy, super cool guy, couldn't believe he did it, but he turned the boat around. We were going out. He turned the boat around, Goes, and there was a couple other people that had to get off. So there was like 6 of us that needed to get off. Me included.
You were the straw
in
that
St.
broke
Paul.
the camel.
Yeah, I guess. But he turns around, and he didn't want to go back into the harbor because the harbor in there is terrible in St. Paul, and it was a big boat. So he didn't want to do that. So he pulls around to the end of the island and anchors up and takes a skiff, and I think there's 5 or 6 of us. Puts us in the skiff and takes us over to the beach. And somehow or another, he contacted somebody. Oh, they'll get you. So it was a nice day.
This is Akitan again.
It was a nice day.
Did you have parachute pants on?
Didn't have parachute pants on, no. But drops us all off with our bags, and there's like a couple of women there, a couple of, and they got their bags, and they're trying to get off. So there's like 6 of us. Dumps us on the beach, and they take off because they got to go and blah, blah, blah. And we start walking, and he's like, oh, just go down this way. So we start walking down the beach, right? 300 or 400 yards to this road. We can kind of see where the road is, and there's freaking sea lions. It's like a sea lion rookery where he dropped us off. So as we're walking down this beach, these sea lions start coming out, and they're freaking barking at us. And it gets a little scary, and there's this lady, and she's freaking out, right? She's trying to run almost to the water, to get into the water to get away from this thing, and I'm just like, oh my God. So I'm kind of shielding her and these sea lions, and you've seen them, right?
Oh,
they're big, and they're freaking, these are stellar sea lions, and they're barking
that
at
whole
us.
neck roll.
Oh yeah, they got their babies there, you know? Yeah. And so we do this big long walk in our go home gear, up this beach, and we finally get up there with all these sea lions barking at us, and there's a truck sitting there, and they take us to the airport, and of course we get stuck for 3 days, which worked out okay because she didn't have the baby. I made it for the baby, but just unbelievable. Just drops us up on the beach, and there we go.
That's a really good story.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
It's hard for me to sit over here and contain myself to not laugh while you're telling it.
I know. There's so many, man. There's just so many things that happen up there. It's the coolest job in the world.
And you came from no one in your family being a part of fishing. No history of it. But now,
Alaska,
when Susan was pregnant, she had. Is this when Nick was born?
No, that was when Sarah was. No, that was when Nick was born. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'd already had Sarah. So
and now where's Nick now? Today?
Nick's on the boat. Yeah.
He's fishing.
Yep, he's on the boat with me.
Uh-huh.
Yep, he did a couple of summer gigs tendering. He's 25 now.
Making sure it's something he wanted to do.
Yeah, 20,
now you
25.
can't pull him off
He did a couple
boat.
summer things, and he was working with my brother for a while, and then it just kind of happened that this spot opened up. One of my deckhands decided to go do something else, and it just worked. And man, I was nervous about it at first. Susan was super nervous about it. It's a weird dynamic to have your kid on the boat.
Well, yeah, if something bad goes wrong, it's going bad for two people.
Sitting up in the wheelhouse when it's shitty out, and I'm watching him, and but it's just been great, man. Craig Jensen was actually, we were down at the boat yesterday, and he was watching Nick and I run some wires, and just go, man, that's just so cool, And it really is. It's really a cool thing.
What I find cool about it is I was out to lunch with it the other day with Nick, and he talking to your mate Dominic, and he says, Tom, I don't think that light's ever worked. That there's no, the positive and negative are both black. That wiring is so old. I've never seen that light on. Like he had seen this boat and knew what he was talking about from a very young age. Yeah. The statement was so matter of fact that I've never seen that light work before.
Yeah, he's got a really good head on his shoulders for sure, and he's engine room guy. He is
going
completely different from me. Yeah, completely different from me. He's all about mechanics.
How does that feel to be passing on a legacy?
Oh, dude, it's awesome. It's fantastic. Like I said, you worry about it first. You're nervous about it at first, and you're unsure. But I mean, it's just worked out great. I mean, he's working for in my opinion, the best company in the Bering Sea.
Safest.
And he's working on the best boat in the fleet.
Yeah.
Safest, most stable, best producing boat in the fleet. It doesn't get any better now.
Nice.
It's just absolutely awesome. He's got a house and
25 years old.
25 years old, owns his own home, and he's going places. I mean, it's just.
What advice would you give for folks that are listening that have no experience in this at all, but maybe are, because we need fresh blood in our fleet, not only in our fleet but in our industry.
We do.
What advice would you give to someone sitting back in Bury in Washington right now, 16 and a half years old with parachute pants on and a mullet?
Yeah.
First, it'd probably be change clothes and get a haircut, right? But
absolutely.
But after that, I mean, what advice would you give those kids that are out there really want to make a change in their life?
Well, I mean, for me, it's all about just sticking with it. It's really hard for kids nowadays to come up there to think about going up there because you give up so much. It's such a different lifestyle. It is the best job in the world, and And there's plenty of jobs out there. There's plenty of work out there. It's just put your head down and work. Put your head down and get to work. That's what it is for me. That's what Nick's got, somehow. You got that from me?
He obviously
and
got
his,
it from you
mom,
and your wife.
Yeah, and his mom. But those jobs are out there, and I just, I can get on a rant about the whole homeless thing around here and the way our Seattle is, our city, and it's laziness, man. It's friggin' laziness, and I won't go off on it, but that's what it is, and it needs to. When a young kid, if they can just, there's so much work up there. Yeah. I mean, you think about our plant, how many people they hire. Tried it up there at Akitan, and there's work. People just need to. We got to get our kids to work towards it a little more. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the answer is, but I do know that
probably is to just work, right?
It's just to work. It's just
take a chance at it.
Yeah, go after it. Because it's there. And
it used to be you were so hungry for a job. I mean, for me anyway, I would walk the docks. Mm-hmm. And ask every boat. I would knock on every boat and ask if there was a job, if I could do anything. I found myself at Fisherman's Terminal diving underneath someone's boat with I didn't have the engine hose or nothing. Yeah. But I also didn't have on a survival suit, but found myself scraping barnacles off the bottom of his boat for him with a putty knife. That's what he wanted, and that's what I was going to do. Yeah, I think you're right. Work ethic's changed a bit, but there's still a lot of kids out there that are hard working.
There is, and it's harder.
Your son's an example of that.
Yeah, it's harder. You can't just fly up there and get on. You've got to go through the procedures, and it can be difficult. And the whole drug thing, the marijuana thing, is a whole other aspect of it because you can't do that up there. And that makes it hard because I
think it's a good solid start to start the way that you did. Going up, proving you can do it on a processing boat. Pulling guts is tough, but by God, if you can do that, you can do. I mean, in Alaska, I've done it. I mean, if you can pull guts for 3 months, you can do anything. Yeah. I mean, there's nothing that you can't.
Yeah,
do.
And I mean, if school's for you and you can, hey man, go for it, right? I'm just here to say, if you can't. I couldn't do it. I could not go to school. I just couldn't freaking do it, right? It just wasn't for me. I needed to get out there and use my hands and work, and it can work. I mean, look at me. I'm prime example. I mean, I knew nothing. I went up there and busted my ass and never gave up and made it. And I think that can happen.
Boy, did you. Okay, well, that's going to be about all the time we got, Jeff. I can't thank you enough for stopping by.
Right on, man. It's been great. Yeah, it's been great.
It's been really cool. Guys, it's Mark Kaler with Galley Stories. Tune in next time. Before I let you go, please take the time to like and subscribe and maybe even comment on the podcast you just heard. Follow us on Twitter at Galley Stories. You can also email in any suggestions, comments, concerns, questions to mark@galleystories.net. Look forward to hearing from you.